What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I am lIss of DynastyRankings.com, and this week, since we are officially in the thick of the Dynasty rookie season, I wanted to break down a prospect that is getting a ton of serious buzz amongst our team over here, and that prospect is running back Kendre Miller out of TCU. So does he have league-winning upside for your Dynasty roster at the NFL level? Let's find out. For a ton of reasons, Kendre Miller has been a player on many people's radar, but to what degree varies with every individual or service. While folks like NFL prospect evaluator Lance Zierlein have him graded as the RB16 overall amongst this draft class, we tend to see him a little bit differently. Because at a projected 6 foot, 220 pounds, Miller checks in with every prototypical feature at the running back position. And the next most exciting fact is that Miller himself is actually one of the very youngest players in this 2023 rookie running back class. At just shy of 21 years old currently, he will enter his first NFL season in a prime spot to maximize his longevity at the position. And this is, of course, music to the ears of Dynasty gamers that are sick and tired of rolling out 23-year-old rookies like Brian Robinson or Rachaad White. Because age absolutely matters, as does age-adjusted production. And we witnessed Kendre Miller's breakout take place in 2021 at age 19, despite the presence of other talented running backs in his own backfield, such as Zach Evans, one of the class's other most intriguing options, who, by the way, also broke out in 2021, then the following season decided to opt out and go to Ole Miss in an effort to avoid yet another timeshare with Miller at TCU. And I don't blame him, because Miller is an elusive ball carrier with not only an ability to make defenders miss, but also to gain tough yards after contact, something that remains key to sustain production at the NFL level. In fact, when we sort the 2023 rookie running back class purely by Pro Football Focus rushing grades, we find two things that immediately stand out. The first one is Miller's base rushing grade. Because although we love to see elite production come from players in conferences like the SEC versus the Big 12, PFF grades every play accordingly. And Miller just happened to rank the RB11 overall, just behind Devon Achane with a grade of 89.5, which is right around where we've seen players like Jonathan Taylor and Kenneth Walker ranked in their final seasons in the past. And the second one that stood out, and maybe even more so than the base rushing grade, was Miller's elusiveness. Because while he broke the elusiveness rating system in 2021 with a score of 181.1 on just 97 touches, he came back in 2022 once again to post top performer numbers, as he ranked number 6 overall in the class with a rating of 123 on 213 total touches. Now again, while both of these Pro Football Focus metrics are not guarantees of success, the elusive rating alone has shown a correlation coefficient of 0.28, which isn't by any means the strongest indicator in town, but it does indicate a relationship between the 2 points. And I've gone back and forth on what is more valuable to me when looking at a running back prospect. Do we focus on a single best season, or do we look at career production as a whole? In the case of Kendre Miller, for me, it's a bit of both, because the amount of touch competition we saw at TCU. I mean, when you have a quarterback absorbing 100 rush attempts in back-to-back-to-back seasons, it's going to nuke your counting stats a little bit. And this is why averages are oftentimes a lot more valuable than looking at raw end-of-season production. For instance, when looking at rushing performance amongst the 2023 class, you will find few runners that matched Kendre Miller on a per-game basis. For starters, his 6.3 yards per attempt ranked number 8 overall in the class and was neck and neck with players like Jahmyr Gibbs and Tyjae Spears. But because I remain a big fan of independent production, just like this show, let's see how Miller matched up in the yards created after contact category. Now, of course, this is a metric that can be heavily swayed by volume, so I've filtered this group and set the threshold at 150 rush attempts, which admittedly removed talented players like Roschon Johnson and Cameron Peoples from the conversation. And these were both players who finished with over 4.2 yards created after contact per attempt. but my belief is that with 100 more rush attempts than they currently saw, both players would have likely seen a reduction in their yards created after contact numbers, bringing them down as well. So looking back at our filtered group reveals that Kendre Miller, who came up 1 carry shy of 200 last season, finished with a top 8 overall number at 3.66 yards created after contact, and this is a historically strong number that matches up nearly identically with what we saw from Breece Hall coming out of college just a year ago. Which, interestingly enough, brings me to yet another Breece Hall production comp, and that was his usage in the passing game. Something that stood out from Hall that we saw in his first year in the NFL prior to injury. Now, while Breece Hall's final season target share of team pass attempts, which is often cited, did end up nearly twice that of Kendre Miller's 5.5% over his final season, when looking at the percentage of targets per route run, we see a different story. In fact, when we look at their final 2 seasons at age 19 and 20, we see a nearly identical average between the two. Now, I am not saying that Kendre Miller is Breece Hall, because Breece Hall absolutely shattered the NFL Combine, but let me throw this article quote up on the screen from the Des Moines Register, a very, very, very popular publication.
Well, I may have just said that.
And it reads, Hall was confident that he'd run a solid 40 at the Combine, saying he predicted it would be between 4.38 and 4.42, but in one-on-one meetings with coaches, they were thinking that Hall would run a high 4.4 or even a 4.5. Now, nobody expected Hall to perform like he did whatsoever, and now here we are with Kendre Miller in a similar situation. But when looking at the NFL Next Gen stats and their estimated athleticism scoring projections, Miller is immediately ranked as a top 10 potential performer. But if that wasn't enough to convince you that there may be more under the hood than expected, perhaps my guy Fusu Vu can help us take this to the next level. You see, Fusu Vu has been measuring running backs' top speeds from video clips since you were in diapers, and Kendre Miller just happened to make the list.
It's to Kendre Miller. Right up the gut goes Miller. He's gone. Touchdown.
As seen here, Fusu has measured Kendre Miller with a top speed of 21.9 miles per hour, which would have been the 3rd fastest play in the NFL last season, and shockingly just ahead of Breece Hall, a name that I swear to God I am not trying to shoehorn into this video intentionally. Now, by this point, it's widely been stated that Bijan Robinson is the top running back in this class and already being considered the RB1 overall in Dynasty, while having not even played 1 NFL snap yet. And to be fair, if he does deliver on all of the hype, who should be ranked ahead of him? Breece Hall is coming off of a major injury. Jonathan Taylor is now 24, coming off of a mediocre season that was marred with injuries and, of course, poor offensive line play. Kenneth Walker still remains a bit of a question mark in the passing game after finishing 2022 with just 2.3 targets per game. Travis Etienne, who we all love, is also 24 and just barely more targeted than Kenneth Walker at 2.6 targets per game, but with a better overall game script in Jacksonville. And, of course, Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey are 5 full years older. So just for fun, knowing that Bijan may be ranked as the RB1 overall in fantasy before the season even starts, I thought, why don't we compare some of their performance numbers side by side, since they were both a product of the Big 12. For starters, and not so surprisingly, both of these players had similar strength of schedule, which each ranked inside the top 4 in the country in 2022. But when we look at some of the most important performance markers between these two players, here's what we get. For starters, right off the bat, Bijan Robinson has been an absolute volume monster the last 2 seasons and absolutely obliterates Kendre Miller by over 230 touches over that same time span. This would, of course, explain the enormous gap between these two players in opportunity share, where Bijan surpassed Miller by 13% over the last 2 years. So I'm not surprised in the least that that translated into over 10 fantasy points per game more for Bijan Robinson over Kendre Miller. And I'm not normally one to count what I can extrapolate, but if we look at the usage rates between these two players, the gap closes significantly. Okay, so when we look at how each player performed after contact, you can see that Miller was actually gaining yardage at a greater rate per touch. Additionally, for perspective of big playability, when looking at breakaway rates, which focus on carries of greater than 15 yards, Kendre Miller blew Bijan Robinson out of the water by a rate of more than 16%. In fact, even focusing on the average of PFF's elusive rating metric metric points to Bijan and Kendre playing somewhat similarly over the last 2 seasons. Even in the passing game, when looking at how often someone was targeted while running a route, Miller again is nearly neck and neck with Bijan Robinson. But let's be honest, at the end of the day, there really shouldn't be a debate about these two players. Robinson performed early with immense volume, was hyper efficient for his entire career, and never coughed up a significant workload to anybody. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be excited about what might be right around the corner for Kendre Miller, because I've recently had more than one analyst that I trust come to me and point out landing spots just like these. Because mark my words, this is the start of the perfect storm at the running back position in Dynasty. With the current free agent market, the enormous number of 26.5-year-old running backs, and an incredibly deep incoming running back class, your favorite veteran assets are going to see either a touch squeeze or at minimum the shot clock on their Dynasty value start this year. So getting your hands on a member of the new crop early may be the answer to your volume problems tomorrow. And Kendre Miller has every tool and likely draft capital to end up that guy on your Dynasty rosters. All right, thank you everybody once again for checking out the channel. If you enjoyed this deep dive, then do me a favor and hit the subscribe button below to catch more of my upcoming content. And if you want to go a step deeper and show your support for this channel and get some exclusive content along the way, check out patreon.com/I'm outraged. And last but not least, go sign up at dynastyrankings.com so you guys can get your hands on our newsletter to keep you completely up to date as we approach our May 1st launch date. And I will see you guys next week.